Learning from failure, 100-mile attempt number one, October 2014, Pine to Palm 100 miler in Oregon. My rise from starting to run ultras and then attempting my first 100 was probably a little bit quicker than it should have been. I ran the 50 miler in October of 2013, and soon thereafter, actually after observing Western States, which I always wanted to run, and Hard Rock in 2014, decided to attempt the Pine to Palm 100-mile race in Ashland, Oregon, a race directed by the famous Hal Kerner, who won 2 Western States 100s. And this particular race was at the time a Hard Rock qualifier and a Western States qualifier, so I was going to take care of 2 qualifications with 1 race. I made the reservations, plane reservations, and paid the entry fee and flew out to Oregon a couple of days before the race. And I had met David Laney and Hal Kerner the previous summer at Hal's store, Hal's running store in Ashland, Oregon, and super nice guys, and really wanted to attempt to run in these beautiful forests and mountain trails of Ashland. And the race actually starts in Williams, Oregon, and is a point-to-point race, a very challenging and technical point-to-point race, which starts with a 10-mile climb from Williams, Oregon, and then a descent into the valleys and the mountain roads down below, and winds its way up to Ashland, Oregon. Now, I came into the race in very good condition, and despite some issues along the way, with including a bad fall at mile 39 or 40, which injured my back pretty severely. I had spasms and found it difficult to run downhill at all. Going uphill was bearable, but going downhill was pretty much intolerable. I somehow made it to mile 60 in that particular race, and with the amount of descent ahead, which was about 30 miles of descent, believe it or not, and most of that would be in the dead of night, and the temperature was getting colder and colder. I could barely stand up, much less walk. I pulled the plug at mile 60. Was my longest run to date, but nevertheless it was a failure. Out with an injury despite all the training, and I was extremely disappointed because I had really trained hard for that race and wanted my first 100 to be a successful one, especially with Hal Kerner as the race director, and he actually greeted me back at the finish line area. I'd gotten a ride back to the finish, and was very concerned about my back, which I had there again hurt in the fall, and I couldn't walk very well, but I was more disappointed, I think, than hurt, and realized that I had made the right decision to pull the plug. But nonetheless, dropping out was definitely not what I wanted to do in my first 100. That disappointment led to thinking about my next 100, which I'll talk about in my next episode. But I started with a failure. My first 100 miler was a failure, and it would not be my last failure at the 100-mile distance, or the attempt at the 100-mile distance. So you can learn from these things, and what I learned was I needed a lot more practice on running technical trails, because I fell on a very technical section coming down a hill at that particular point of the race, and I had a few stumbles here and there, but no major falls during the race, and that was a pretty bad one. So I definitely needed to get more practice running technical trails. Everything else was good. My nutrition was good. My hydration was good. So I did some things well in that particular race. But the fall and the injury and the dropout were tough pills to swallow. More on my next 100-mile attempt in the next episode. Cheers. And it's actually snowing outside.